I've been sitting here for an hour, just staring at the screen. I keep thinking, where do I even start? I guess I just need to get this out somewhere, even if no one reads it. It's been 5 years since everything happened, since my entire life was ripped apart. I thought I moved on, built something better. But now? Now it's all coming back. I'm 28, but this story starts way before that. I grew up in my brother's shadow. Derek, 30 now, was the golden child, the one who could do no wrong. And me? I was just there. If you've ever read one of those Reddit posts about parents playing favorites, multiply that by 1,000. I remember when I was 10 and Derek was 12. Mom had this glass figurine collection, her prized possessions. One afternoon, we were messing around in the living room. Derek knocked one off the shelf. It shattered into 100 pieces, and the second it hit the floor, he looked at me, then looked at the stairs. Then he screamed, "Emil, Mike broke your figure." By the time she came running in, he had tears in his eyes, like he was heartbroken for her. I stood there, stunned. Mom didn't hesitate. She grabbed me by the arm, dragged me to my room, yelling the whole time, "How could you? That was my favorite." I swore up and down it wasn't me. Didn't matter. Derek got a hug. I got grounded. That was just how it was. Over the years, the favoritism only got worse. Derek crashed Dad's car at 17, texting while driving. Instead of being punished, they bought him a new one. Because, apparently, he needed reliable transportation. 2 years later, I asked for help buying my first car. They told me to learn responsibility. At dinner, they'd ask Derek about his day, his friends, his plans. When it was my turn, "That's nice." Eventually, I just stopped talking. But Derek wasn't just the favorite. He was calculated. He had this way of twisting things, turning himself into the victim, making me look like the screw-up. And the worst part? He loved it. That smug little smirk whenever he got away with something. The way he'd glance at me like, "See? They'll always believe me." I should have known. Even then, by high school, I gave up trying to impress them. I just focused on getting out. College was my escape. I worked my ass off, got scholarships, and moved as far away as I could. That's where I started building my own life. I landed a job in marketing in Denver. Nothing fancy, but it paid well. More importantly, I was good at it. And that's where I met Emily. It started at some stupid company event, one of those forced team-building things where everyone pretends they like each other. I was hanging by the snack table, avoiding small talk, when she walked up next to me and whispered, "So, you figured out the only safe zone too, huh?" I laughed. She had this way of making fun of things without being mean. We ended up talking for hours. At first, it was just lunches at work, inside jokes, shared eye rolls in meetings. Then, one night, she mentioned wanting to see a new Marvel movie, but none of her friends were into superhero stuff. I offered to go. Halfway through the movie, during some intense fight scene, she grabbed my hand. She didn't let go. And just like that, we were us. Emily actually listened when I talked. Not just waiting for her turn to speak. Really listened. We had deep conversations, but we could also just sit in comfortable silence. We took random weekend trips, tried new restaurants, made stupid bets over board games. 2 years in, we moved in together. A small apartment, barely enough space for both of us, but it was ours. That's when I started thinking about proposing. Even started saving for a ring. Then Derek came back into my life. I hadn't seen him much since college. Kept my distance from my family, only showing up for the occasional holiday dinner. But then, out of nowhere, he started texting me. "Hey man, been too long. We should catch up." I wanted to believe he was changing. That maybe, just maybe, he was growing up. So when he asked if we could meet for drinks, I said yes. I should have known better. At first, it seemed normal. He asked about my job, my life, Emily. Then he started showing up at our apartment, always acting like it was casual. Emily thought he was charming, thought it was sweet that he was trying to reconnect. But I saw it. The way he watched her. The way he'd bring up my past relationships in front of her. Little digs disguised as jokes. "Man, you sure you want to settle down? You've never been great at commitment." Or the way he'd touch her arm when he laughed at her jokes. The way he'd remember small details about her interests, bring them up later like he was the one paying attention all along. I told Emily I didn't trust him. She thought I was overreacting. He's your brother, she said. Maybe he really is trying to be better. I wanted to believe that. I ignored the warning signs. And then my life fell apart. It started with a work trip. My company sent me to a conference in Seattle. Emily couldn't come. She had a huge campaign launch that week, so I went alone. I took photos, updated our group chat, FaceTimed her every night. Everything was normal. Until I got back. I was at my desk, catching up on emails, when Emily walked into my office. Her face was pale, hands shaking. She didn't say anything at first, just held up her phone. Can you explain this? I took the phone, watched the screen, and my blood ran cold. It was a video of me, or at least, it looked like me. I was standing in a hotel lobby, kissing some woman I'd never seen before. The details were perfect. My clothes, my posture, the hotel's interior. It was the same hotel I'd stayed at. For a second, I felt like I was losing my mind. Emily, this isn't real, I said, my voice cracking. I wasn't there. I never left my room after work. She barely glanced at me. Don't lie to me. Her voice was cold. It's you. Same suit, same hotel. What am I supposed to believe? That someone just magically faked this? I pulled up my phone, scrolling frantically. Look, my location history, my Google timeline. It shows exactly where I was. I held it out to her. You know me. You know I wouldn't do this. Her expression didn't change. I can see you in the video, she whispered. I trusted you. And just like that, everything slipped through my fingers. Then my office phone rang. I glanced at the screen. Derek. A sick feeling settled in my stomach. I answered, my voice hollow. What did you do? A pause. Then, whoa man, what's going on? Emily just called me. She's really upset. What the hell happened? And that's when I knew. That's when I finally saw it. Derek had done this. And I had no idea how far he was willing to go. I don't remember driving home that night. I don't remember unlocking the door, stepping inside our apartment, my apartment now. All I remember is standing in the middle of the living room, staring at the empty space where her things used to be. She hadn't even waited, hadn't even hesitated. One video, that's all it took. My chest felt hollow, my breathing shallow. I sank onto the couch, my hands shaking. The video kept playing in my head, over and over. The way I turned, the way I moved, the way the lighting hit my face. Perfect. It was too good, too real. This wasn't some sloppy Photoshop job. This took planning. My phone buzzed on the coffee table. For a second, stupid hope flared in my chest. Maybe Emily had changed her mind. Maybe she was coming back. But no, it was a text. From Derek. Damn, bro. That looked rough. You okay? If you need to talk, I'm here. I stared at the screen, my pulse roaring in my ears. And then I threw my phone across the room. The next few weeks were hell. The video spread fast. Someone at work saw Emily crying in my office, and by the end of the day, everyone knew. By the next morning, my boss requested a meeting about company values. By the end of the week, I was fired. It didn't stop there. Mutual friends ghosted me. People I'd known for years unfriended me. Even my best friend from college, Nate, sent a single text. Dude, what the fuck? I replied, it's fake. He left me on read. Then my parents called. Not to ask if I was okay. Not to see if there was a mistake. No. Mom was crying. Dad's voice was filled with disappointment. They'd seen the video. Derek had shown them. You need to take responsibility for your actions, Dad said. I tried to explain. Told them it was fake. Told them Derek had set me up. Dad just sighed. Michael, stop blaming your brother. And Mom? She wouldn't even speak. Just sniffled into the phone while Dad lectured me. That was when it finally hit me. There was nothing I could say that would change their minds. Derek had one. I packed my shit and left. Didn't tell anyone. Didn't say goodbye. Just got in my car and drove. Ended up in Denver, crashing on my friend Mike's couch, the only person who believed me. He worked at this old school gym. Nothing fancy. Just weights, machines that groaned when you used them, and regulars who didn't give a shit about gossip. You can work here, Mike said. Won't pay much, but it's something. I took the job. Started from nothing. No career. No friends. No Emily. And yet, for the first time in years, I felt free. No Derek. No parents making me feel like a failure. Just me. And then, months later, I met her. Hannah. She was a kindergarten teacher. Sweet. Funny. Had the worst posture I'd ever seen from working with kids all day. I need help, she admitted, blushing. I have no idea what I'm doing in a gym. I laughed. Lucky for you, that's my job. We started training together. Then talking. Then, something more. She never pried into my past. Never pushed. Just waited until I was ready. And when I finally told her everything, she hugged me. Didn't question me. Didn't doubt me. Just held me. And that's when I knew this was real. This was something Derek could never take from me. 5 years passed. I built a life. A good one. Opened my own gym with Mike. Moved in with Hannah. For the first time in forever, I was happy. And then, a message. From an old friend. Just a video. No text. I almost deleted it. But something made me click play. The screen flickered. The shaky footage of a bar. Loud music. Then, Derek. Slurring his words. Laughing. Drunk off his ass. You want to hear something crazy? He bragged to some girls. I destroyed my brother. The girls looked unimpressed. But Derek kept going. Found this guy online. Real pro with AI. Cost me 15 grand. But, worth every penny. I stopped breathing. Made this perfect fake video. My brother cheating? Looked exactly like him. Even matched his fucking clothes from his work trip. He snapped his fingers. Almost fell over. Girlfriend believed it immediately. Lost his job. His friends. Everything. Just like that. The girl filming spoke up. That's fucked up, dude. Derek grinned. He didn't deserve any of it. The video ended. I sat there, staring at my phone. Fingers numb. 5 years. 5 years of exile. Because of him. Hannah found me sitting there, pale, shaking. Mike. I handed her the phone, watched as her expression changed, softened, turned cold. What are you going to do? She whispered. I didn't know, but I knew one thing. Derek wasn't walking away from this. Not this time. I didn't sleep that night. I just sat on the edge of the bed, staring at my phone, Derek's slurred voice still rattling in my head. He didn't deserve any of it. I clenched my fists so hard my nails dug into my palms. 5 years. 5 fucking years. Because of him. Hannah stirred beside me. Mike. Her voice was groggy, soft. You okay? I exhaled slowly, rubbing my hands over my face. I don't know. She sat up, her warmth pressing against my side. You're shaking. I looked down at my hands. I hadn't even noticed. She didn't say anything else. Just reached over and laced her fingers through mine, grounding me. I swallowed past the tightness in my throat. I can't just let this go. Hannah was quiet for a long moment. Then she nodded. I know. The next morning, I called Emily. I didn't know what I expected. Maybe for her to ignore me. Maybe to hang up the second she heard my voice. Instead, she answered on the third ring. A beat of silence. Then, a quiet breath. Mike. I hadn't heard her voice in 5 years, and yet, somehow, it still made my chest tighten. I need to see you, I said. In person. Another pause. Then, softer. I was hoping you'd say that. We met at a coffee shop just outside of town. Neutral ground. I got there first, sat in the back where I could see the door. My hands curled around a coffee I wasn't drinking. And then she walked in. She looked tired. Older, but not in a bad way. Just like life had worn her down a little. Her hair was in a loose bun, and she wore an oversized sweater like she was bracing for something. For me. Our eyes met. She hesitated, then walked over and slid into the chair across from me. Neither of us spoke at first. I studied her, looking for something. Anger, regret, guilt. She just looked sad. Finally, she exhaled. I saw the video. I nodded, my jaw tight. She swallowed. I don't even know where to start. I did. You believed him. Her shoulders tensed. You didn't even hesitate, I said, my voice sharper than I meant. You saw one video, and you left. Didn't ask. Didn't listen. Just walked away. Her fingers clenched around her cup. I know. I waited. She took a slow breath. I was stupid. A bitter laugh. God, I was so stupid. And I've spent 5 years knowing that. Hating myself for it. She looked down. I thought about reaching out. 1,000,000 times. But what was I supposed to say? Hey, I destroyed your life. My bad? I didn't answer. Because I didn't know if anything she said would ever be enough. Then, she hesitated. And I saw it. The thing she was really afraid to say. There's something else, I said. She nodded. Another beat of silence. Then, she whispered, you have a son. My breath caught. I just stared at her. She licked her lips, hands shaking. His name is Ethan. He's 4. A pause. And I think he's yours. I forgot how to breathe. For years. That meant, I did the math. The timing lined up perfectly. My voice came out rough. You think? Emily winced. She exhaled sharply. I was with Derek after. For a while. Her face twisted, like the words tasted like poison. When I found out I was pregnant, he swore the baby was his. I believed him. Or I wanted to. A bitter laugh. Then Ethan was born. I saw it in her eyes. The doubt. The way she knew the moment she looked at him. She reached into her bag, pulled out her phone, and slid it across the table. I stared at the screen, and my heart stopped. A little boy. Dark hair. Big brown eyes. Eyes that looked exactly like mine when I was a kid. My chest ached. Emily's voice was barely a whisper. I should have told you. I swallowed hard. 5 years. I had a son, and I never knew. I looked up at her. Does Derek know? Her face twisted with something dark. Not anymore. I frowned. What does that mean? Emily hesitated. Then, quietly, he left. When I told him I wanted a paternity test, a sharp silence. Just left? She nodded. He's never met Ethan. A sad, exhausted smile. And, honestly, that's probably for the best. I couldn't argue with that. I let out a slow breath, trying to process everything. The betrayal. The anger. The fact that Derek had taken so much from me. And yet, in the end, he still ran. Because that's all he was. A coward. I looked at Emily. At the woman who'd once been my entire world, and then ripped it apart. There was so much I wanted to say. So much I could say. But right now, there was only one thing that mattered. I want to meet him. Her eyes filled with tears. She nodded. And just like that, everything changed. The next afternoon, I stood outside Emily's house. I could hear my heartbeat in my ears. My hands were clammy. I hadn't been this nervous since, hell, I didn't even know. The door opened, and then, there he was. Ethan, 4 years old, holding a dinosaur toy in one hand, staring up at me with wide, curious eyes. For a second, neither of us moved. Then, he frowned. You look like me, he announced. I choked out a laugh. Emily stood behind him, silent, watching. I crouched down, swallowing past the lump in my throat. Yeah, buddy. I think I do. Ethan studied me for another moment. Then, his tiny face split into a grin. Want to see my dinosaurs? I let out a shaky breath. Smiled. Yeah, kid. I'd love to. I didn't know what came next. Didn't know how this was supposed to go. But for the first time in 5 years, I had something Derek couldn't take from me. And I wasn't going to lose it. Not again. Ethan was talking a mile a minute. I sat cross-legged on Emily's living room floor, watching as he lined up his toy dinosaurs with the seriousness of a general preparing for battle. His tiny hands moved quickly, placing each one with purpose. This is T-Rex, he explained, holding up a bright green figure. He's the boss, but he's kinda mean, so the others don't like him. I nodded, swallowing past the lump in my throat. Sounds tough. Ethan nodded solemnly. Yeah, but this one, he picked up a smaller dino, orange and worn from years of play. This one's the real hero. He helps the little ones. Even when they don't know they need help. Something in my chest twisted. Emily sat on the couch, watching us. She hadn't said much since I arrived. Just let Ethan take the lead. I wasn't sure if that was for his sake or mine. I was still trying to wrap my head around everything. This was my son, and I had missed everything. His first words, his first steps, his first day of preschool, all of it, because of Derek, because Emily had believed him. A sharp bitterness rose in my throat, but I swallowed it down. That wasn't Ethan's fault. None of this was. Right now, all that mattered was him. Ethan held out the orange dinosaur. You can be him. I blinked. Yeah. He gave a firm nod, like it was the most obvious thing in the world. He's the best one. My hand shook a little as I reached out and took the toy. It fit perfectly in my palm. The next few weeks felt surreal. I started seeing Ethan more. At first, just short visits, an hour here, an afternoon there. Then longer ones. He was cautious at first, but kids are resilient. They don't overthink things the way adults do. To him, I wasn't some stranger. I was just Mike. That's what he called me. Not Dad. Not yet. But I didn't rush it. Didn't push. I just showed up. Because after everything, that's what mattered most. And every time he grinned at me, every time he tugged on my sleeve to show me something, every time he sat next to me on the couch and leaned against my side without thinking, it was enough. But then, just as I was starting to believe things might actually be okay, Derek came back. It started with a voicemail. I saw his name pop up on my phone while I was at the gym, my stomach immediately twisting into knots. I let it go to voicemail. 30 seconds later, another call, then another. By the fourth one, I finally played the message. His voice came through, raw and desperate. Mike, I know you saw the video. I know you hate me. But please, we need to talk. I clenched my jaw, my grip tightening around my phone. He had the nerve to ask for a conversation? After everything? After he destroyed my life? Another voicemail came through. This time, his voice cracked. It's bad, man. I screwed up. I screwed up so bad. I need your help. A bitter laugh bubbled up in my chest. Help. Derek had never asked for help in his life. He took. He manipulated. He twisted things until people gave him what he wanted. But now he sounded terrified. Good. I deleted the messages. A week passed. I didn't think about Derek. Didn't acknowledge him. Until Emily called. The moment I answered, I could tell something was wrong. Mike. Her voice was tight, clipped. Derek showed up at my house. I shot up from my chair. What? He knocked on the door, asking to see Ethan. A cold rage spread through me. What did you do? I asked. I told him to leave. That Ethan doesn't even know who he is. But she exhaled sharply. He looked bad, Mike. Like, really bad. I paced the length of my apartment, my pulse hammering. And then? He begged me to get you to talk to him. I laughed, sharp and humorless. That's never gonna happen. I know, she said. I just thought you should know. I ran a hand down my face, frustration bubbling under my skin. If he comes back, call the cops. I mean it, Emily. She hesitated. Mike, I think he's scared. Good. She sighed. A pause. I don't know. He looked broken. For a second, I almost felt something. A flicker of the old brotherly instinct, the one that spent years trying and failing to get Derek to be a decent human being. But then I remembered what he took from me, what he stole, and I felt nothing. The next night, I found him waiting outside my gym. I almost didn't recognize him. Derek had always been the golden boy, charming, confident, untouchable. But this was different. His clothes were wrinkled, his hair a mess. He had dark circles under his eyes, and his usually cocky smirk was gone. Instead, he looked desperate. Mike. His voice cracked. Please. I crossed my arms. You've got 5 seconds before I walk away. His throat bobbed. Then, in a voice so quiet I almost didn't hear it, someone's after me. I frowned. What? Derek licked his lips, glancing around like he expected someone to jump out of the shadows. The guy who made the video, the one I paid. He swallowed hard. He's coming after me. I stared at him, then, slowly laughed. Wow, I said. That's actually impressive, Derek. I didn't think you could sink lower, but here we are. making up some bullshit sob story just to... I'm not lying. For the first time in his life, Derek looked genuinely terrified. I hesitated, just for a second, and that's when he said it. He wants something, Mike. He said if I don't pay up, he's coming for you next. A cold chill ran down my spine. For the first time, I really looked at Derek, and I realized he wasn't scared for himself. He was scared for me. For the first time in my life, Derek looked afraid. Really afraid. And not just in that way he used to fake when we were kids, when he'd try to weasel out of trouble with wide eyes and a shaky voice. No, this was real. His hands were shaking. His eyes darted to every shadow, every passing car. He wasn't just scared. He was hunted. I stared at him, arms crossed, my body rigid. So let me get this straight, I said slowly. You hired some guy to destroy my life, paid him 15 grand, and now he's coming after you? Derek swallowed hard. It's more complicated than that. I let out a humorless laugh. Is it? He ran a hand through his hair, exhaling sharply. Mike, listen to me. I didn't just pay some random guy. The dude I hired. He's not just some tech nerd. He's connected. Russian, I think. Or Ukrainian. Some kind of mob ties. I don't know. I didn't ask questions. My blood ran cold. What the hell are you talking about? Derek stepped closer, lowering his voice. I thought it was just a one-time deal. Just some AI guy who knew how to make deepfakes, you know? But after I paid him, he came back. Said I owed him. That it wasn't just about money anymore. I scoffed. You owe him. Not me. He flinched. Yeah, well, he doesn't see it that way. My jaw clenched. Derek licked his lips. Mike, he knows who you are. He studied you to make that video. He has everything. Your voice, your face, your movements. He could make another one, worse than the first. He could put you anywhere, doing anything. And this time, no one would ever question it. A sharp, cold fear crawled up my spine. I wanted to tell myself it was bullshit. That Derek was just trying to drag me into his mess like always. But deep down, I knew he wasn't lying. Not this time. I took a slow breath. What does he want? Derek shook his head. More money. More favors. But it doesn't matter, Mike. He's not gonna stop. And if he thinks I don't have anything left to give, his voice trailed off, his face pale. He'll come after you instead. I stood there, staring at him. This was his mess. This was his problem. And yet, my son, Ethan, if this guy really had the power Derek claimed, he could ruin everything. Not just for me, but for my kid. For Hannah. For the life I'd built from the ashes. I exhaled through my nose. Fine, I muttered. Give me a name. Derek blinked. What? I stepped closer, voice low. You heard me. Who is he? Derek hesitated. Mike. I grabbed his collar and slammed him against the brick wall of the gym. His breath hitched. You don't get to hesitate, I growled. Not after what you did. You owe me. His eyes darted around, panicked. Okay. His name's Sergey. He operates out of Chicago. I only met him once, some fancy club, VIP section. After that, it was all online. I released him, my mind racing. Chicago. That was a long way from Denver. But I had to end this. One way or another. I didn't tell Hannah everything. I told her enough. That there was someone out there who could still hurt us. That I had to deal with it before it got worse. She didn't like it. But she understood. And that's why I loved her. That night, I booked a one-way ticket to Chicago. Finding Sergey wasn't easy. But I still had some connections in the business world. A few favors to cash in. It took 2 days, but eventually, I tracked down the club Derek had mentioned. I walked in, heart hammering. The place was upscale, too rich for me. I was out of place from the moment I stepped inside. But I didn't care. I found a guy near the bar, one of the bouncers. Slipped him 100. I'm looking for Sergey. The man barely blinked. You don't look like his usual type. I kept my face neutral. I'm not. But I have business with him. The bouncer gave me a long, assessing look. Then he nodded toward the back. VIP section. Good luck. I didn't need luck. I needed revenge. Sergey was exactly what I expected. Slick suit. Cold eyes. a smile that didn't reach his face. He looked me up and down as I approached. You must be Michael. His accent was thick, Russian or Ukrainian, just like Derek had said. I was wondering when you'd come. I didn't bother with pleasantries. You need to leave my family alone. His smirk widened. Your family? Ah, so you've embraced fatherhood. How touching. My hands clenched into fists. I'm not playing games. Whatever Derek owes you, it ends now. Sergei tilted his head. And if I say no? I leaned in, voice steady. Then I make sure every law enforcement agency in this city knows exactly who you are, what you do, the technology you're using. I have proof. I have names. And I will burn your entire operation to the ground. For the first time, Sergei's smirk faltered. Good. He studied me for a long moment. Then, he chuckled. You have your brother's arrogance. I have something he doesn't, I said. A reason to fight. Silence. Then Sergei sighed. Fine. Consider your little family untouchable. He leaned back, swirling his drink. But tell Derek, he's still mine. I didn't care about Derek. I turned and walked away. I never saw Sergei again. I never heard from him. And just like that, it was over. I went home. Back to Hannah. Back to Ethan. Back to the life I fought so damn hard to rebuild. Derek tried calling me after that. I ignored every single call. One night, he left a voicemail. I know you hate me. I get it. But you're all I have left, Mike. I deleted it. Some bridges were meant to stay burned. A year passed. Hannah and I got married. Ethan was our ring bearer. A few months later, we had a daughter. Life moved on. And for the first time in forever, I was happy. Truly, finally happy. One day, I got a message from Emily. A photo. Ethan, sitting on the floor, his dinosaurs lined up in a perfect row. At the bottom of the message, just 4 words. He still remembers you. I smiled. Because I knew I wasn't going anywhere. Not this time.